I sat in the chair and trembled. It was always hard recounting my mother's story. I didn't want the therapist to see me cry. I was strong and I was healed. I could not destroy that image by crying in front of her. I took a deep, shuddering breath. "I need a moment," I said. The therapist took a sip of her coffee and nodded. She seemed absorbed in what I had just told her, too absorbed to speak. I remembered years ago when my mother told me her side of the story. I am not sure how much of it was true. Her mind was already gone. Those conversations with her had broken me. I don't know how I held in all of that pain as I listened to her explain why she hated me and how she never wanted me. Afterwards, I would seek the loving arms of my wife and sob. She was my demon, my monster under my bed. When she died, a very small part of me was sad. The rest rejoiced. She had become to me what T-Mac was to her. I don't think she ever realized that. I walked to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. My hands shook as I stared at my tired reflection in the mirror. I was not finished here. I still had to relive the horrors of living with my mother. I sighed and walked back into the therapist's office and sat down in front of her. The therapist looked up and smiled at me.
"Shall we continue?"
she asked. I took a deep breath and began.
I woke late again in the night, my body drenched in sweat, my head spinning. I was cold and shaking even though it was almost 90 degrees in the bedroom. I turned to see my older sister Maya laying next to me. She was almost 3 years older than me. I was 6 years old. I was tall, bony, and had a head full of nappy hair. I always felt strange when I was around my siblings. I was the only one that was black. If you looked at me and then at them, you would not believe that we were related at all. Beside Maya lay Sandra, and beside her was my little brother Issa. He was the baby of the family. He was a year old. We all had different fathers except Sandra and Issa. My mother was Egyptian and very poor. I guess it made sense that we all had different fathers because my mother was a prostitute. I got out of bed slowly. I did not want to wake the baby and get hit by my mother again. My lip was still swollen from the last time she had punched me in the mouth for waking him. I was very dizzy. I had overheard the doctors telling my mother that I would feel this way for a long time. It was due to the abundance of crack that was in my system when I was born. I stopped at the door to the bedroom. I heard voices in the living room. My heart started racing. Whenever my mom had company over, something bad normally happened. I could smell the smoke from the pipe she smoked. I did not know what to do. Last time they took my sister Maya to the other room and she screamed so bad I thought she was dying. When she finally stopped screaming, I cried, for I swore my big sister was dead. I waited until after my mother and the men left and went into the room that my big sister was in. I saw her resting on the floor, naked, her pale face bruised and beaten. Her body lay twisted on the carpet. I went up to her. I was afraid to touch her. I noticed she had a lot of blood coming from between her legs.
"Hey Maya, you're peeing blood,"
I said timidly. She did not move. So, I grabbed a blanket that was in the room and covered her with it. I lay next to her and took her hand.
"Don't worry, big sis. I promise I won't tell anyone about this,"
I whispered to her. That was 2 weeks ago. My mother had left with the men that day and did not come back for several days. I had to do what I normally did and try to take care of my family. Maya was still hurt and not moving, so I changed diapers and ran to the local Circle K to steal some bread so we could eat something. My mom did this often. She would leave us for days and we were left to fend for ourselves. I liked it better when she was gone. We never got hurt when she was not there. The men with my mom laughed loudly. I cracked open the door and almost gagged. The smell from whatever they were smoking was horrible. My mother sat with 2 white men. They had a camera they were playing with. I was debating myself on whether I should try and sneak to the bathroom or just get back in bed and pray I did not wet myself while I slept.
"Hey, is that your little black son?"
One of the men said, pointing at me. My mom looked at me and laughed.
"Yeah, he looks like his monkey-ass father,"
my mother replied. She looked me in my eyes and seemed like she wanted to cry.
"Get your ass back in the bed before I mess you up,"
she shouted at me. I did not know why she looked so sad. Her white friend that first noticed me stood up.
"He looks nothing like you, Sky. You sure this bastard is yours?"
He asked as he walked over to me. I didn't want him to see Maya and the others in the room, so I stepped out and closed the door behind me. He kneeled in front of me. He smelled horrible. His blue eyes looked at me intently.
I always thought Negroes were kind of sexy,
he said, and ran his burnt fingertips down my cheek.
Just leave him alone, Tom,
my mom said. Her voice was shaking. I knew she was scared.
Shut up, Sky, and grab the camera,
Tom shouted at her. My mom stood, camera in hand.
You don't want people to call you a black lover, do you?
My mom said and pointed the camera at me.
They call you one and you do just fine,
Tom replied and started to unzip my sleeper. I looked at my mom, who was still recording me.
Just do as he says, Jesse. Maybe he will buy you the bike you wanted,
Mom said.
Yeah, do as your ma tells you, Jesse. Your sister got a nice new dress and some shoes for her services. I'll get you a bike,
Tom said. I looked Tom in the eye.
Why did you hurt Maya?
I shouted at him. I was angry. I felt like I was going to explode. Tom punched me in the face so hard I fell against the door. I was fighting to stay conscious. I felt myself being picked up and carried to the other room. Tom threw me on the floor. I landed so hard it knocked the wind out of me. The rest of my sleeper was ripped off. I was naked and felt weak from his punch still. I saw him taking off his pants.
You recording this, Sky?
Tom asked. My mom's eyes met mine and she shook her head. Tom reached for me and I kicked him as hard as I could in the stomach. He cursed loudly and hit me several more times. I blacked out and I don't know for how long. I just remember having a lot of pain in my butt and hearing my sister's voice in my ear.
Don't worry, little brother. I won't tell anyone about this,
Maya said. Things went on like this for a while. That was not the last time I saw Tom, nor was it the last time he raped me and my sister. Sometimes it was other men, as my mother recorded. I have to believe that each time she sold us to these men, she died a little inside. Sometimes she would just stare at me. Her thin, pale hand rested on my unkept and unwashed hair. She would rock back and forth, her eyes haunted. For a long time, she was no more than a hollow husk. A jinn, an invisible spirit in Islam, stuck in the ravaged body that was once my mother. I can't say I have many fond memories of her. The bad ones stand out so much more than any good ones we might have shared. Yet to this day, as a grown man with children of my own, I find myself thinking about her. I still weep for her. The little boy in me who sought her arms when I got hurt still yearned for her embrace. Those same arms that would make the world melt with its warmth have also brought me so much pain. Forgive me. My memories of this time are scattered a bit. I have endured so much pain that some horrible memories I have forgotten because other nightmarish times took their place. This brings me to my next memory. My mother and I have one thing in common today. We both hate and fear police. I remember waking up to my mother frantically shaking me.
Jesse, get up! Hurry!
She said, fear in her voice. I sat up quickly, my head spinning. I threw up everywhere. The night before, my mother was shooting up something alone. I had come to sadly look forward to her doing this. I knew she would be out for hours. We would be safe. She would not hit us or force us to do things to each other. My mother heard me wake up and called me in the room to sit with her as she shut up. I did as she asked. I knew she was going to try and touch me as she normally did. She would often call me her big black man as she fondled me. I no longer tried to resist her or when Tom came over with her. I knew they would just beat me until I passed out. I had been beat so many times that even those did not faze me much anymore. I had become the shield for my older sister. When my mother and her Johns wanted Maya, I would attack one of them and get them to focus on me, the little nigger boy that they loved to degrade and destroy. This night, my mother was shaking more than usual.
Do you hate me, Jesse?
She asked as she examined my bruised and dirty face. Some moments there seemed to need clarity, as if my mother was trapped somewhere deep down in that body that some jinn inhabited. Like she was able to escape the monster and look at me sadly. My heart at this point was bruised worse than my face or body could ever be. The heart, unlike the body, starts to get cold and hardens when pain becomes the norm. My heart was ice. It seemed whatever demon had my mother in its grasp was starting to have me as well. "No, mother," I replied, my voice as emotionless as a corpse.
I am so sorry, my baby boy.
She wept and pulled me closer to her.
I know I have done
She paused a moment and just stared off as if she was remembering all the things she had done to us.
bad things.
She paused again, her breath coming in rapid.